Every day I wake up and I feel so alive. I think to myself. What's up, y'all? It's another episode of the Cheeky Cauldron podcast, where no topic is too spicy for the pot. I'm your girl, Tamika, and I'm here with my friends and co-hosts, Ani Williams and my Cherie. Now, last week, we got to chop it up with our guests, Carissa Eve and Ani, about mediumship and mystics and all of that stuff. And if y'all missed it, you missed a really good episode. Y'all go to YouTube and check it out because we'd love to have y'all see it and give us some feedback on it, all right? Well, this week, we are going to be discussing cults in America, and we have a guest who is being piped in from Northern Illinois, Julia Hart. She is an author and of The Jewels of January, fiction work, and she's a cult survivor. Thank you so much for being here with us, Julia. Ladies, give Julia a warm welcome.
Thank you for coming, Julia.
Hi, Julia.
Thank you for being here to help us stir up the pot.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm quite honored.
But before we get into that, y'all, I want to interrupt this regularly scheduled program to ask y'all, did y'all hear about P. Diddy?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yes. I don't know if there's been anybody who hasn't heard about this. The feds raided his house. And he did a modern day O.J. Simpson, except for there wasn't a white Bronco. It was was it a G6? What kind of plane does he have? I don't know. He's so rich, we don't even know, y'all.
We don't even know.
P. Diddy is under investigation for sex trafficking. And I mean, a lot of people have been coming out of the woodworks. We all heard the story about Cassie, his ex, who he was with for 10 years. She filed charges on him and sued him, got her shmoney, and then dropped the mic. And that opened the floodgates for a bunch of other people because now his record producer from his last album, Richard, what's his name? Rodney Jones, is suing P. Diddy. He alleges that Diddy sexually harassed him, drugged him, and kept threatening him. And so
there's been a lot of rumors like prior to all this coming out for years about him and things like just nefarious things that I've heard.
Yeah, because 4 other women along with Cassie sued him. But my question is, y'all think P. Diddy trying to be on the level of a cult leader? That's what I'm correlating this with because he went from Sean Combs to Puffy to Puff Daddy to P. Diddy to Love and Brother Love. And Brother Love sounds like a cult leader name.
His name is Brother Love now?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I do think that whether or not he was consciously trying to create a cult, he did. I definitely think he did. He had all of the power. It was his way or the highway. He had all the money. People weren't fully aware of what they were getting themselves involved in. And then he had this coercive power over them. Those are all the tenets of a cult. So I
agree.
I think that correlation makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also with all of the sexual depravity, and we know that with the history of a lot of cults in America, that's also part of it.
Yeah.
And anybody who wants to come up in the music industry and they know that, you know, here's how you go about doing it. So it was almost like he used that over, especially like with Cassie, with this whole thing of like her music career would be over if she did not do the things that he wanted her to do. And it's like, she was she's talented. And so to have to deal with someone abusing her for her talent to get out there, that's really messed up. But that's psychologically, she was screwed by him.
Yeah, but you know what? He probably used that to induce her and get her in there. But in 10 years, they were together for 10 years.
Yeah.
Her career did not really go anywhere.
Because she was being abused. She was being abused by him.
Yeah, but you know what? For me, for 10 years, if she was being abused, at some point, I would have been like, what about my music career? What about my music?
You say
what
that, but you don't know the kind of mental, it's like a mental sabotage. you are no longer using your higher functioning brain. You're only using your limbic system, your emotional center, and your reptilian brain, survival.
Mm-hmm.
You are no longer thinking the way you did when you first went in.
She's been in fight or flight. She was probably in fight or flight the entire relationship.
I bet our guests can attest to what I'm saying.
I know, I'm nodding my head like crazy.
You're nodding,
When you're in it, you don't even sometimes know I didn't know I was in a cult until somebody started kind of pointing out some of these red flags to me that I was just going for my higher spiritual self. I was just trying to be better. And I'm sure that he was using carrots in front of her and things to say, all you have to do, baby, is do this or be this for me or do that. And then your career is going to take off. Or who knows what he was using to manipulate her to the point where her brain just starts thinking, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing this enough. Just all of it. It just all happens all the time.
Yeah. And then you add in this extreme wealth, right?
Yes.
This lifestyle that she was nowhere near before she met him.
And that's the big carrot to
Right.
be dangling in front of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But before we get all into that, Julia, hang on one more second. We're going to talk about our cheeky eats.
Oh, yeah.
Y'all know we love to go eat. And so my choice for a restaurant this week was Corinne. And it's off of 304 West Cesar Chavez in the Marriott Hotel. And it is beautiful. It's modern and comfortable decor, a dope large patio, which Ani and I, we were trying to leave and we got stuck out there.
We did.
So we got to see it a little bit, but we didn't sit out there because it was nighttime. But Corinne's is feel-good, honest food that has an effortless simplicity. It has a 4.2 rating on Yelp, and here's why. Mike, can we roll that beautiful bean footage? That's the patio, y'all.
Ooh, that bread was
so
good.
That was my favorite. The oysters.
That was delicious. I loved that bruschetta situation.
What was that? Oh, that
butternut
soup.
squash soup.
It was too thick.
That's what I ordered.
That was good. What I ordered. It was
I like
pot roast.
yours better, the pot roast.
Well, I had some old vegetarian pasta.
It was good.
Don't be hating on the veggies. Oh
No, it was very good, but I've been eating vegan, so
I
means-
really
of
loved
you.
it. And I love simplicity. I love that afterwards I didn't feel all gross.
Mhm.
Like I still felt healthy after I left the restaurant. You know, sometimes the food's delicious, but then you feel, ugh.
Yeah,
Mm.
especially eating steak, which,
What I had was like it was like home cooking, like the pot
did.
roast with the carrots.
Mhm.
It was
Yeah,
so
the whole
yummy.
meal felt like home cooking.
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys
Oh,
go
yeah.
check it out. I think it's kind of a hidden little gem.
It
you wouldn't
is,
think
because,
it's in the hotel.
it's inside the
Yeah.
hotel and it just has a little sign on the side that says Corinne's. But if you get a chance, go check it out. And especially on Cesar Chavez, where that part of the street is so busy. That little
Mhm.
hidden gem of a patio to have drinks out there and sit. We're going to have to go back.
We will.
Just so we could sit on the patio
Patio.
and have
Yes.
some drinks.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. Well, let's get into it. The cults of America. Cults, that word is very, very kind of
Loaded.
it's a loaded gun. But the definition is a system of religious veneration or devotion directed towards a particular person or object. Now, I don't understand how these mostly men are so charismatic that they get you to like give up your everything and become this person and drink the Kool-Aid, as they say. But it happens, y'all. And so we're going to talk about four top cults that were kind of the most famous and worst case scenarios here in America. 1, the Manson family.
Mm.
And I mean, if you haven't heard of Charles Manson, I don't know where you've been. 2, Heaven's Gate. The Branch Davidians, and I know y'all heard about that because Waco here in Texas, it was huge. And then the People's Temple. And you may not know that name, like back in the day in the 80s? I didn't know the name, but you know this name. And it's very synonymous. That's where we got the quote, drinking the Kool-Aid from. Do y'all know who it is?
Yeah.
2 words,
Jim
Jim
Jones.
Jones.
Yes.
I think he's the most famous. He's also had the most movies made about him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, because also too, he had the worst case of, people being killed. It's so interesting the power that these leaders can have under the guise of religion. Now, Julia, I know your cult, it didn't really have to do with religion. It had more to do with like self-help, right?
Yeah, it was self-help and psychology. We followed a lot of like Jungian and Gestalt
Mm.
Oh, how
people and stuff
interesting.
like that.
Gestalt. Wow.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was
Well,
all about tearing down your ego and then building you back
Yeah,
up the way
that's what I
he
was
wanted
thinking.
to.
What a way to get at people. But we'll get to you. Wow, that's
yeah.
fascinating.
'Cause I want to finish with this.
Okay.
A lot of these leaders, they use religion. They told their followers they were the Messiah or that their people were the chosen people. And a lot of these cults led to death.
Mhm.
Some of the
Mm.
I
numbers.
think some of these leaders really thought they were the Messiah.
No, they had to.
I think there was some, psychological unwellness.
Well, we know, like, Manson was
Yeah.
his psychological
Mhm.
abilities were
He was a
crazy.
psychopath.
Yeah, he was a
Mhm.
psychopath. Well, his thing led to 9 deaths. And we all know of Roman Polanski. He was a big director back in the day. Sharon Tate was his very pregnant girlfriend. She was like 8 or 9 months pregnant. And she was a famous actress back in the day. And then Heaven's Gate, 39 deaths. And the engineer, Mike, and I, we were talking about it, how women, they rarely lead cults, but then they are the most number of people to be killed in a cult. This
Mhm.
one, Heaven's Gate, out of the 39 people, 21 were female and 18 were male.
How were they killed? Does it say?
Oh, they took some poison, girl.
So they did it on purpose?
They poisoned, yeah, they
Okay.
poisoned themselves. They thought that they were the chosen people, and then one of their members got cancer because they thought nothing could touch them or nothing can hurt them. And then when this person got cancer and they died, they were like, what? We are not aliens. We are human. And they were constantly,
I remember this.
yeah, they were constantly waiting for the aliens to come back and pick them up. Yeah. And when that didn't happen, they were just like, okay, we're out of here. We're going to kill ourselves. But they thought that they were going to come back. Like they were going to come back from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So then the Branch Davidians, which, we know Waco, the government kind of bombarded their encampment.
Was that with David Koresh?
That's David Koresh,
Okay.
yeah. 76 out of the 85 people died. Children, women,
Mm.
yeah. And then the People's Temple, or Jim Jones, 918 deaths. That was the highest loss of American civilian life outside of 9/11. And he literally had these people give up everything they owned, took them to Africa, and
Oh, I thought they were in South America.
no, it was Africa.
Mm.
It was Ghana, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do remember some people who tried to escape were shot,
Oh, yeah.
and
yeah.
then other people drank the Kool-Aid. And some people who survived it laid down and pretended to be dead.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. They had, he was under investigation and they sent an American, I don't remember if he was a state representative or whatever, but they had a reporter and they went to see what was going on. And this was right at the time because there were so many investigations on abuse and
Mhm.
people trying to get out and they couldn't leave. And so they were there, they did a story. And when they tried to leave, they were shot and killed.
They were shot and killed too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That part I remember.
Well, according to experts like psychologist Steve Idle, up to 10,000 cults still exist in the U.S. Outside of these 4 high-profile cases, and maybe a few others, a lot of them just fly under the radar.
Yep.
They don't get seen or heard, and
There was a cult at my school at USC when I was there. I know because they invited me to a party. And we had dinner and I thought it was so nice. And then everybody was handed a Bible. And I was like, huh? What's happening? And then next thing you know, it was Bible study. And I was like, okay. And then I realized where I was. I realized
Oh,
because they
my
were telling me
goodness.
like, you don't have to live in the dorm. We have room for you here. We're a family. And I was like, oh, this is a cult.
Mm.
Oh,
Freshman in
my
college.
goodness.
I wasn't there for more than 6 weeks when they got me.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
Girl.
Fresh off the press.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I said, these types of cults, they rarely draw attention, which brings me back to you, Julia. So, you were a part of a cult. And before we dive into that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Because I want to talk a little bit about your book, The Jewels of
Oh.
January. And I had a little blurb about it. Look,
She can tell us. Tell us about your book.
tell us
Julia.
about your books and
Do you
your book
want
and
me
about
to
yourself.
show? Oh, I have this is the proof copy, but this is the book. So
Oh,
instead of, I have had a long time to process. And when you said, tell us about yourself, my immediate brain was like, that self or this self? Because really, it's in my head, there's almost two of me. There was the one that
Wow.
was in the cult. I was 19 years old, on the verge of taking my own life because I had such bad anxiety attacks after passing out every day for about a year. I didn't think death could be any worse than that.
Oh, man.
I was already isolated from my family because, I grew up, I was a bit of a punk. I thought I knew what was going on. And, I kind of got out into the big bad world and I met the wrong people at the wrong time and got sucked up into it.
wait, I'm sorry. I just want to
Yeah.
understand. You were having these anxiety attacks before you got in?
Before.
Before. Okay, go on.
Yeah. Shortly after I got out of high school, I moved to Colorado. I was living in Denver. And I didn't, it's like not my other friends weren't, I wasn't like doing drugs. I was going out and dancing a lot, but I wasn't drinking at that time because of my anxiety attacks. I couldn't do anything that made me feel weird. Right. If I didn't feel like totally grounded, I was passing out. My brain was just like, oh, emergency, pass out, so I wasn't doing bad things really, but, yeah, somehow my brain was not ready for the world and it just kept vexing me at every turn. So by the time I had moved to Austin, because I had an aunt and uncle that lived there, things were going even farther south. I couldn't connect to them. At the time, I had black hair and they thought I was all goth. And you know how it is when you're a kid and you're
Yeah.
going through
Mhm.
your thing and your people around you don't get you. They're used to the Northern Illinois farm girl. And here I am, not that. And it just was kind of a dissonance I couldn't deal with. And so,
It was your emo phase.
right. It kind of was, even though it was, back in like the mid 80s, like maybe like 86
Yeah.
ish. So yeah, it was just my thing and they couldn't deal with it. And so I just kept feeling more and more isolated. And with the anxiety attacks and everything, I just got to a point where I couldn't do it. One of the friends that I had met and all these friends was hanging out with this cult. He also didn't know that it was a cult. He had no idea. It was just one guy, we'll call him Frank, because that's what I called him in my book. Frank was he told all of us he had a degree. He went to UT, and back then you couldn't Google somebody and find out anything. You couldn't do anything but go to a library or hit Encyclopedia Britannica if you wanted information. So we believed him, and at the time there was like this split. There was like people that were like probably mid 30s and older, and then all of us other people that were around 19 or 20.
Young adult.
But yeah, young adult. And I could see how I was so fractured, but a lot of these people didn't have anxiety attacks. But there was something intrinsic missing in them that he was able to pull out and to say,
That's that.
"Here, let me make you feel better.
Mm.
And you belong here. Those people are making you feel bad. We make you feel good. Hang out with us."
That's
The
that
love bombing.
charisma. That's that charisma.
Right, exactly. And he did make me feel better. And I never had an anxiety attack when I was in the cult. And I think that's why, and that is why, and because he would always tell me, this is where God wants you. Even though we didn't deal with like a religion, it was still the universe, God in general, a higher
So then he
being.
did kind of use that.
Yeah. Can I just say
Yeah.
one thing? I find this so fascinating, right? So at the young adult stage of development, like
Mhm.
people don't realize you're still going through puberty. Your
Mhm.
hormones are still leveling out and you're really trying to identify who you are and differentiate from your family and just,
Right.
kind of walking out in the world. So he hit, and I understand there were older people, but he was attacking such a vulnerable demographic as you're trying to make your way into the world that's why people do it in colleges,
Mhm.
because these kids are coming out and they're still like trying
And they
to
don't know
figure
who
out
they are.
who they are, and they're told it is time for you now to go make your stake in the world, and they're
Mhm.
terrified. So
Yeah.
wow, what a predator.
What a
Anyway,
predator.
go on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Julie, go on.
Okay. Uh, no, I totally agree with everything that you said. Yeah, I mean, we were all very vulnerable, and the older people, I think they were vulnerable in a way that they were kind of, I'm 30, 35. I haven't made anything in my life yet. Shouldn't I? I mean, I think we all go through these stages in life. And I think he just got them when they were at a lower stage and was able to, even though he was in control, he always made everybody feel for their own particular reasons that they were special. You're special because you can teach them. You're special because of your light. You're special. We all had our specialty.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't allowed to really cross talk with each other, especially if there was something that we thought was a
Oh.
little sketchy or whatever. We always had to go to him. We weren't allowed to talk to each other about it.
Divide and
Mm.
conquer.
That's just what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to keep
We all
because
know that's
he had us.
a tactic.
Yes, it's a very strong one. And so 30, that was 1987. I was in the group from like 87 to 2001, 2002.
Wow.
Only
That's a
5 years.
long
I
time.
was lucky. I mean, right? Oh, I know. But one of my friends, one of the people in the book, she just got out like 5 years ago.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I mean, 30 years of her life. And he just got more and more twisted and sadistic as he went along.
Of course he did. So he's still operating.
Yeah, he is. Well, I don't know at what level.
But
Um,
if she just got out.
yes.
Okay.
He
Mm.
just got out. There are still, I think, 4, maybe 5 original members, people that I was there with, that are still, as far as I know, supporting him. And, I don't know if they're, actively getting new people to come in to the fold. I just know that
So
if he's there, they're taking care of him.
So I understand you want to keep the anonymity. So without giving away too much, where do you live? Like, do you live with him on some place, or do you still get to maintain your own private residence?
Oh,
I was
When
in
you
it.
were in it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
I was going to say now.
Back then.
Hell no.
No.
Well, I was going to get to that because, like I said, there are a lot of cults out there, and we cannot specifically name this one, but we know that it was here in Austin.
In Austin.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
Yeah,
you
it was
know,
there
so
in Austin
where
in a
do you
nice
live?
neighborhood.
Oh, a nice neighborhood. Okay.
yeah. So
It was
tell
a
us
very
about
nice
it.
neighborhood. Yeah, like there was part of my brain. It's like, go ahead and say it. You can say it. And the part of my brain's going, girl, you'll get sued. Especially if you're writing a book, I have to kind of keep everything very,
Mhm.
without naming or slander and stuff like that. But yeah, it was in a very nice neighborhood. We bought and owned a house there that from the outside was, just as nice as everybody else's. I think the neighbors always thought everybody always thought something was going on.
Mm.
Even at the club. Okay, so yeah, we'll get to that. We're getting to that part. So yeah, we lived in a nice neighborhood. Everything was, kind of normal from the outside. He tried to make sure that we had a quasi-normal look because he didn't really want to create any outside attention to
Attention.
himself.
And so when you say we bought a house, all of you, the people that lived inside the house, put money into the house?
Well, that's interesting because we did go to court later about the house, but at the time, only himself and one other person owned the house. And then later when she got out, she wanted the house, but we all paid. I had to pay a lot of money to live in that house. And I think that there were 3 bedrooms upstairs and one like mother-in-law suite downstairs. And for a long time, I lived downstairs with him. He loved me in the beginning. Like I was the special one. That's why I have a lot of guilt. I have a lot of remorse because I feel guilty because for a long time, I was the lucky one. I couldn't do anything wrong. I had it so much better than everybody else.
What happened if you did
And
something wrong?
oh, I mean, it just depended on what your particular neurosis was. Like I had a lot of abandonment issues. And because I have, CPTSD, which I've had since probably I was 3. And that's where I also feel like I was culpable. He never came to my house and said, "Hey, you're a mess. I'll come help you." I showed up at his door a wreck. And I'm culpable for that. I'm the one who got where I was and who precipitated getting worse.
Okay.
And granted, I didn't know a lot of the things to do to help myself and the places to go, but I want to take responsibility for the fact that he didn't come find me. I found him.
Okay. Can
And
I run
after that, he was a mess. Yes.
Can we run it back a little bit? You said since 3 years old, you had what? CPTSD?
Chronic.
CPTSD, yeah.
What is
Chronic
that?
post-traumatic distress disorder.
Oh,
Because so the way that I had grown up, my father was extremely violent. My mother left when I was 3. And I was just never lived in one place longer than a year. Never lived with an adult longer than a couple years. Never went to a school longer than a
Oh,
couple years.
And
my.
I was
so
just
and just so everybody knows, so CPTSD was a DSM term in 4. In 5, they actually took the C away, but it means chronic post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh, okay.
So once you've had it over a period of time, they took the C away because they're saying now post-traumatic stress disorder doesn't really go away. So it doesn't matter when you get it.
Okay.
so you don't need to see.
You don't need
Yeah,
to see.
sometimes people would come up to me and say, "There's no way you could have post-traumatic stress disorder because you've had more than one event happen." And it was like,
What?
What?
yeah, I sure have.
That would
That is
make you have it.
ridiculous reasoning.
right. Yeah,
I guess I guess the part that I was asking, what I'm curious about, not so much what your punishment was, but when you said I had it good, what were all of his punishments psychological punishments? He would find out what your weakness was, and then he'd find a way to hurt you emotionally. Oh wow.
And so we all had different weaknesses. And he just knew exactly what they were. And it was never something, he never like punished you alone. It was always in a group. It was always in a setting.
So
And
he would
sometimes
shame
He
you.
would shame you.
Oh, yes. He was the king of shame.
So he didn't do things like lock people up or restrict food or things like that. It was all psychological.
It
Okay.
was all psychological. Yeah. As far as I know, he never laid a hand on anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Never did anything like that. But man, he was the king of making you feel like you'd rather be dead than where you were. He just made you feel so bad. So where were we? It's a long, it's hard to explain how you get someplace because it didn't just happen. It wasn't like, oh, I turned on the light and there I was in a cult. It takes a while
Well,
to
we
get there,
know
but-
that you found yourself in Austin, then you were having these panic attacks and you found yourself in this self-help cult.
Yes.
Group. What was this built on? Did he have any principles or any rules on the wall? Like we've heard about the punishment if you like misbehaved or whatever, but were there any like rules that were set? Because I know a lot of these cults, there's things you have to abide by. Like a lot of people have to give up their earthly belongings and they have to give all their money, and that you were going to get into because y'all purchased the house, but you paid a lot to get there. How can we like somehow get around to all of this stuff, like the principles and how you had to work to, pay into this?
Yes. So I would not say that there were a lot of hard, firm rules. And I think that part of the trickery in it and the psychological problem was in the gray area.
Yeah, that's what I was
Had
thinking.
there been real rules, then it would have been easy to stay out of trouble. But because everybody has a different neurosis, he treated everybody differently. So somebody might have, because we were young, there was a part of it, we wanted to go out and do young people things. So there were a core group of people that lived in the house, and then there were other people that did not. So those people had a little more freedom, right? They could go out once in a while, or they could, but it was just dependent. If somebody was like an alcoholic and they said, "Oh, I went out and partied last night," then they would probably get in a significant amount of trouble because that is their issue. Where another person who was maybe, their issue was they never left the house because they were socially stigmatized or something like that. And they said, "I went out with some friends and had a few drinks," and they might not get in trouble for that because that wasn't their issue.
I
So
also
you
was
just
thinking
never knew.
most of these leaders are narcissists, like full blown, right? And so with the narcissist, they have to keep the chaos. So rules beyond just giving me all your money wouldn't really make any sense because they can't keep you in chaos.
Right.
So go on.
Had I had a clear tunnel to flow through, I would not have made the mistakes, and then he would not have been able to administer the punishment, whatever that might be.
Right.
So and also another key thing he did, especially for me, because for some reason, because of the post-traumatic stress disorder, I was super easy to trigger, but he would make all of us go to bad movies, like movies where there was horror movies and, things like that. So I was constantly being triggered, constantly
How much
re-triggered and
older
re-triggered
was he
and
than
re-triggered.
you back then?
He was, if I was almost 20 and he was 40. So he's 20 years old. I remember he
So,
was almost the same age as my father.
so I have a question. You said that you were the favorite. Was there did he force you to have sex with him, or did y'all have a sexual relationship? Like, or how did that work with everyone living in the house?
Yeah.
How did that kind
It
of,
was both.
yeah.
When I first got there and he was love bombing, it was just us.
Mm-hmm.
But then the minute that was kind of getting old or whatever to him, then he started making us have sex with other people, have other girls come in, never guys at that time. At least it was always the girls. And it was always awkward. It wasn't like, hey, let's have some wine and party sex. It was, let's make this situation as uncomfortable as possible. You two are 19. You've never done this before, but I'm going to shame you for not knowing what to do and not knowing how to enjoy yourself when under these extremely difficult situations and blow it all up and make you. We had to write a lot of affirmations.
Wow.
A lot of affirmations.
What kind of
That was part of it.
affirmations?
Some of them were, just stuff like I'll just use money as an example, but like, the more money I make, the more money I can give, the more I give, the better I feel, the more Frank prospers, the more I prosper, whatever, just,
Mhm.
and just
Mm.
constantly. I have a callus on my hand I've had for 30 years from writing so many affirmations back then.
Wow.
So and we did a lot of rebirthing.
He was
Mm.
programming, you guys. All that writing
Oh, yeah.
is programming.
He was a master manipulator.
He would, right. He really was. And I think when we were talking about P. Diddy and these other people, it's like, they are geniuses in a lot of ways.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They really are. They really understand the human brain and how to keep it under stress and how to keep it.
Yeah, when
Doing
you were
what you need
talking
it to
about the
do.
way he was treating the young girls, that made me think about Diddy. I was like, well, that's what he's doing, like having these
Right.
sex parties, quote unquote parties. I bet these people are uncomfortable
Yeah.
when they're in these situations.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially
but
at that
everybody,
age.
they're thinking he's so high profile and he has so much that he could give them. Real quick, there's a story about a writer, Touré. And if you know anything about like MTV or like hip hop and all that stuff, he used to do a lot of the hip hop writing. He told a story after this Diddy thing came out of his nephew. And he said Diddy was a person I could just pick up the phone and call him and be like, hey, man, I need a favor. And he did that for his nephew so that he could do an internship with Diddy. But then he quit like all of a sudden. And Torre's like, what's going on? And he would never tell him what happened. And then finally, like years later, he told him what happened, that Diddy, diddling,
Diddling.
diddling.
He diddled him.
That Diddy tried to diddle him.
Yeah.
And
It was a
I
Frank
read that.
situation.
and he said, if you don't, this internship is over.
Yep.
And the guy walked out of the door.
Do you know how many
So-
people he probably did that with?
Yeah,
There- I
but you
mean-
know what? People want fame and they want to get on and they want their record contracts so bad that you don't know what they'll do.
And it becomes their God. I think what's interesting is you were in a cult that wasn't spiritually guided, but in a way it was, the spirituality was mental health and peace. Like that was the God, right? Like, oh, if you want mental wellness and to function in society, then that became the religion.
And who
and with-
doesn't want that?
But right,
Yeah.
and then with Diddy, the religion is the music industry.
Mhm.
This is so there.
Yeah.
It's still that aspect of what is your idol? What are you worshiping? And in
Mhm.
your
Right.
case, you guys were worshiping mental health. Like, oh, I just want to be healthy
Mhm.
and function.
But see, I think my mind, well, my 50,
Healthy right now mind.
and my much older mind is hard to wrap around because I'm so far removed from 19 or 20 that I'm like, no, that wouldn't have happened to me. I don't understand why they're doing it. But I guess, at 19, nobody ever came to me talking about, hey, join our cult, because I probably would have been like,
Yeah, but you're easily influenced.
I just want to ask Julie. So one of the things that
Julia.
I'm sorry, Julia. I apologize, Julia. I just want to ask because, like, kind of what Tamika's saying that, like, right now she can't even imagine it, and uh, I know that one of the ways that you get indoctrinated in a cult is through your emotional system, right? So, can you remember specific things that happened where that's where he was tapping into? Like, was it just his his adoration of you, this whole bit about being special? Like, what do you think it was looking back?
Um, yeah, I think, yeah, definitely. It was kind of a lot of things. It was a cocktail of things. Um, he really liked me at first, and I was like not really interested in. He was gross. He was
Yeah,
40
old.
years old.
Mhm.
And it was just like, no, what, you have all these other girls around. Why would you want me? And he kind of gave me an ultimatum. I think he knew that there was no way. I had nowhere else to go. But yeah, he made me feel special. He made the anxiety go away. You wouldn't think. You'd think under all that stress, the anxiety would be worse. But I felt there was a part of me that felt safe.
Mhm.
I
Well,
knew I
I
was gonna
think
get
I know
through
what
it,
it was.
you
You said with
know?
your family, you were kind of the black sheep, right? And he provided an opportunity for you to be seen by a father figure.
Right,
That right
right,
there
but
for
he also made
a
me
young
strip
girl.
myself of my identity.
Right. Right.
Even
But
though
he
so I had
started
gone
with
through
you
that
being
black hair.
seen.
Right, yeah. Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, all just the littlest things. A
Mm.
smile from across the room, a, "Hey, do you want some water?" while everybody else is talking. The I would be downstairs waiting for him, and I'd hear him tromp down the stairs, and he's like, "Nobody can talk to me except for Julia. Julia's the special one today," you know? Just
Mhm.
whatever a 19-year-old girl's mind is gonna think, and because people were so reverent to him, your brain starts thinking, "Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe he is all that,
Mhm.
and I should start looking at him that way."
You drank the
And
Kool-Aid.
I did, and it didn't take me long before I was in love with him,
Mm.
Yeah.
you know?
So that many years, so you said you volunteered to you volunteered, you said, "I'm accountable for going and being there." But then once you were weaved in and he made you feel good and feel safe and you were just like trapped in this web, were there any moments where you were like, "I wanna leave, I wanna get out"? Like, were there
Yeah,
any of those moments where you were like, "Okay, I wanna go," but then you just fell right back into the space?
I did leave. I don't
Mm.
know where I was. I was somewhere, and a girl that I had moved to Denver or moved from Denver to Austin with and was in the cult with, she left early on. She left the cult early on. She had a job and she had friends outside of the group. I didn't.
Mhm.
Wouldn't let me have a job. I was the princess, and I didn't need money. Anything I wanted, he would give me, and so I didn't get to leave the house.
Mm.
Was making friends in Austin and everything, and so she left one day. I ran into her somewhere, and we started, secretly talking, or like when later, when I would have things to do and I'd run errands or something, I would call her and say, "Here, I have to go to here, here, and here. Meet me somewhere," and I would see her and talk to her. I did eventually leave, but I only was out for like 2 weeks.
Mm.
My life just fell apart. I was cleaning houses at that time. A lot of us were cleaning houses and doing like cash labor, manual stuff, construction work, whatever we could get,
To
window
avoid
cleaning, house
taxes.
cleaning.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, yes. And, but like all my cleaning contracts left, I started spiraling, started having anxiety attacks again. And so he reached out to me through one of the other girls and was like, "Tell her I'm sorry. I mishandled her. I forgot how
Mm.
special she was," whatever. It's just
I
like,
just love
okay.
did he actually use the term "I mishandled her"?
Yes.
Wow.
He had forgotten how special I was and that I was really one of the chosen ones and that he was treating me like the other ones. And,
Can you talk a
you
little
know,
bit about Gestalt before we run out of time, about how he was using that? Because you said he wasn't actually a licensed therapist. Did he even go to school for psychology?
I
So he was self-taught in these psychological modalities.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mm.
I think so. Yeah, so, one of his favorite things to do, I think it all started out Gestalt-like at first, and then the Jungian thing came in from a movie that we watched, but
Mm.
he liked to, like, we would be in classes, like every night there was a class. There was like money class and da da da. And this is when people would come, before we kind of like went underground.
Mhm.
We would have these classes, cook meals for people, and they would come and we'd all sit on the floor. We had a huge living room and we'd all sit on the floor and meditate for a minute. And then we would talk and he would help people through their issues. But then when it was mostly just the core group, he would find one person to just slaughter in front of all of us. There wasn't a thing that they could say that he wouldn't just ease. He would just like pin them until they were just a crying, blobbing mess. And just,
Mm.
you have to surrender to me or you're going to suffer. Do you want to be right and be suffering your whole life? Or do you want to admit that maybe you're wrong, that I am right, and that I can help you? Stuff like that. And and then he would slowly build you back up kind of the way that he wanted you. And we would just go through this constantly. You just eggshells and you'd crack your eggshell a little too hard and boom, you were the next person in line to be targeted
I
for,
wonder how
this.
he came across Gestalt, because I remember when I was in school watching, there's this famous woman who let the founders of the modalities work with her with the same problem, and they all did it in their way. And when Gestalt came, I remember thinking, this is a little rough. Like, that's what he does. He breaks you down. And the woman was like angry with him and they were yelling at each other and he was all happy. Like, yeah, that's how you find out like
What their weaknesses are.
well, what your weaknesses are. Like, he's doing this for good.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that Frank, I love that name for him.
Frank.
That Frank decided to he's like, wow, I can use this to actually build them back up any way that I want and turn them into who I want.
Yes.
Oof.
Did y'all
And
ever have to
either-
go out and recruit? Did you recruit?
Okay, so we'll progress the story a little bit. So yes, we're all working, we're doing all this stuff. And then one of the girls had like body issues, body shaming issues. I think when she was in high school, she was a little heavier. She lost the weight, but I don't think her brain thought she had lost the weight. And he suggested to her to go work at the Yellow Rose because that would give her a better idea of other women's bodies and blah, blah, blah. Well, she started working there. It was, therapy, and started making $300 or $400 a night.
Mhm.
Well, it didn't take long before we all had body issues.
And you all
except
had
for
to
me.
go work
He
there.
did not want me, right? He did not want me to go there to work. I don't know why. I think because I used to do a lot of clubbing when I was younger, and he just thought, or maybe he was just smart enough to know that I was smart enough to get out if I was around enough people.
Yeah.
Okay, quick
I'll
question.
never know, but yeah.
Quick question. Did you all the rest of you had body issues because he told you had body issues?
Yeah, that's what
Or
you're saying.
because
Yeah.
you all had body
Yeah,
issues and you
I'm
wanted
sure
to
it
get
was
out
quite-
there?
I think it was mostly a little a cheeky thing, but I think that he knew that there was money there, that we could make the money there, that he was going to make, we were going to give him our money. So he suggested, that
So
we all
he
start
pimped
working
y'all out
there.
as well.
Yeah, he
Mm.
Yeah.
manipulated
And
them. So you guys all
right, and
worked
so-
at the Yellow Rose. And
We
then
sure did.
would you recruit people from there? Because that's how you started telling the story. Like, you
Yeah,
go in
recruit.
and recruit.
There were a lot of the girls that, and I don't know what he was thinking to have, because it's that whole, don't go to the bathroom where you eat.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Don't let all these people come to the house and see how weird it is, and then go back there and tell everybody. And I think that's how they all started calling us occult girls. But I'm actually still very good friends with a lot of these girls. We're all on Facebook together and stuff. And,
Wow.
most people don't know that they even worked there. But yeah, a lot of them came to the house once or twice, came to one of the classes or whatever, hung out for a couple of months sometimes, there was a lot of them that came over.
But was that what he wanted you guys to do? Was he asking
Oh,
you
I'm
guys
su-
to recruit?
He never asked me specifically to recruit, but I know that like one of the girls, it was almost like her job. Sometimes
Mm.
he'd say like, you haven't brought me any new people. What's going on with you? Have you decided you don't like the cult anymore? Or like the cult. We were the group, the non-group. I mean, sometimes it'd be like, they call us a group. It's like, we're not a group. We're a non-group, but
That's the behavior of a pimp.
Yeah. Okay, so
let's-
go ahead.
Pimp.
so, okay. Yeah, it's funny because when I would give people my book, millennials and younger, to read my book now, a lot of them were like, is this guy sex trading? That was not a thing back then, though. That wasn't even a term. It wasn't something that we even knew what it was.
Yes.
But a lot of people, picked that up immediately from my book. That's the first thing they thought.
Yeah.
which I had to write around that to try to get that to not be something that they saw right away. But
Mm-hmm.
um,
Well,
so
that
yeah, so we're at the club and now we're meeting people, and now I figured out that they're calling us the cult girls, and you know, we're not in a cult. We're just a group of people that are trying to better ourselves so that eventually we can help the planet, or whatever exalted
Mm.
view we were being spoon fed.
So that was the mission, to
That
help
was
the
yeah, that
planet,
was the
to
mission.
save the world.
Yes, to save the world. One stripper.
Wow.
well, that
You were a
brings
bunch
me
of superheroes. Go on.
Yeah, that brings me to your book, The Jewels of January. It's an edgy work of women's romantic fiction. And if you like witty and funny heroines sprinkled with a sprinkle of intrigue and introspection on real life issues, then you'll adore Julia Hart's upbeat look back at a crazy time in her early 20s. Now, it's fiction, but it is loosely based on this whole experience you had.
Yeah, absolutely. It's legally it's hard. It's semi autobiographical.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say a huge part of it. I had to change things just so it made a better story. Stories have to hit beats, and they have to have highs and lows, and there are just some things you have to kind of tweak. But a lot of this, most of the people that are in the book are based on real people, and
And I guess
you know,
because a lot of them might still be in the cult, you couldn't go and get like letters of what are they called when you go and get a letter that you're allowed to write? It has a
Mm-hmm.
name.
oh yeah, I didn't get any of those letters. There isn't anybody in this book that is still in the cult, except of course the depiction of Frank.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to read the book.
Me too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Well,
I'm excited.
So when we very first started, I think that I started with culpability and stuff like that. I've been out for 30 years. So I am no longer really a victim of what happened to me.
Mm.
And I didn't want to write a memoir and make my victimhood even more palatable just so at the end I could be the hero.
I don't think
And so
any of
really
you that got out are victims. You're all survivors.
Mhm.
You all
Survivors, we
survived
are.
it. Like
Definitely.
that's what all of you are.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think I focused on the love story, the fact that I went to the cult to make money for the cult leader, and a guy fell in love with me and refused to let me go, and started through that friendship and building the trust with him. I started to see things a little differently. There's also a really
Mm.
beautiful friendship, girl friendship in the book with another cult girl that I was with, and so it's just kind of an inspiring, inspirational, and kind of a good map to show people outside of a cult how people get into cults,
Mhm.
because all the
Yeah.
love bombing, all those things are in here.
So you started this whole interview by saying that there were people who started pointing things out to you.
Mhm.
Who were those people? Like as you finally were free of it, like what was the
Well, they started pointing it out to me before I was completely free of it.
right?
Mm.
But
So I
who?
would say James, the love interest, a couple of the other girls
Okay.
at the strip club that weren't in the cult that would be nice to me and talk to me, lend me things, or here I have mascara if I'd forgotten something, or just little ways that they kind of opened the door for me. Nobody could pull me out. I think early on, people knew if we pull her out, what is she going to do? She's just going to die,
Mhm.
Or
because
just go
all the
back.
anxiety.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So, um,
What was the final
it,
straw?
oh, I can't tell you that because it's a huge twist in the book.
So you got to
okay.
read that book.
We gotta read the book.
was
Okay.
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
spoil the book
Okay.
if I talk
All
about
right. 'Cause
that.
we want to read it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that brings us to Ani. Can you tell us and the people out there red flags to avoid finding ourselves in a cult-like situation?
Yeah, and Julia, feel free to chime in with this as well. So from my research and like from a mental health background, the biggest red flag is if it's their way or the highway. If everything is wrong with the outside world and the only way that you're going to find your salvation or peace or whatever is within.
Mhm.
And if the leader doesn't like to be questioned. If the leader has like a real issue with being questioned, that's a big one. Another red flag is the money. If you don't really understand the finances, like it's more than just tithing or turning things over, but you don't know where this money's going or how it's being spent. That's another big one. And if you are finding yourself unable to differentiate your emotional space from what's happening with the cult leader, that's a big one. Like if you find yourself, because that's enmeshment, that's codependence, has a bunch of different names. But if you find that like, if the cult leader is happy with me, I'm happy. Or not cult leader. If my new religious leader or whomever is happy with me, I'm happy. But if
Frank's
this
happy, I'm happy.
happy, but if this
Right.
person is upset with me, then I'm really upset. And if it gets to the point where you can't have your own feeling apart from how that person is, then you need to rethink the situation that you're in.
Mhm.
Those are just some really big ones.
Oh man.
That goes for all religion as well, I feel like.
Yeah, I think it goes for anything.
Yeah, it goes for anything.
Yeah.
Relationships as well.
And Julia, please,
Mhm.
if you feel like I missed a big one for people out there that might be questioning their involvement.
No, I don't think so. I think you hit really some of the main ones that, there's always going to be those sub ones that are smaller, but once they get to know you and figure out what your triggers are, then they can trigger you and make you feel better.
Yeah.
And it's
And I would also encourage
evil
people,
geniuses.
this wasn't exactly your question, people who are leaving and getting out to seek trauma therapy, because that's how they keep you in, is they find your ways to traumatize you, usually through
Yeah.
emotion.
Okay.
This
And
guy is an evil genius. This
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And let me say, I had 6 very, very good therapists throughout the years.
Oh, good.
Oh wow.
And
Yay.
I wouldn't have made it without them. Each one of them found another piece that I could put back together.
Mhm.
Wow.
And it was very, very helpful.
Re-
I
do you-
couldn't have written this book without them.
Well, I'm so
reclamation of the soul. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go on.
What did you say?
Reclamation of the soul.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we need to know that. That is so good. I'm so happy for you, Julia. Can you tell the
Thank you.
people where to find you and where to find your book? Because y'all need
My
to go
book
and
on
get that and read
Amazon,
it.
Right. I'm an independent author, so it's on Amazon, it's in print, it's on Kindle, and it's on an audiobook also if you're not a big reader.
I love that it's
Wonderful.
audio.
It's love and audio.
All
We
right.
drive a lot.
Yes.
You're right.
All right, y'all. Well, we're going to wrap it up for
Wonderful.
this episode because, this was so great. And this is our first guest from way far away.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yes.
much
And we
for
will
piping
also
in.
throw up a
Thank you.
link. We'll throw up a link on our site for the book if you guys want to click
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Oh,
Take it
thank
easy.
you. That's
Yeah.
very sweet. And thank you for having me. You guys are so warm and friendly and just nice to kind of hang out and talk to. I want to go to the lunch thing.
Yes.
Well, if you ever get back up to Austin, look us up.
Come and
Call
see
me,
us.
and you
I
can come
will, for
out to lunch with
sure.
us.
It'll be
Thank you
great.
for
That
your
would be great.
presence. Thank you so
Oh,
much
thank you.
for sharing
Bye.
your story.
Thank you.
All right,
All right.
y'all. Well, we can't wait until next week. Y'all come back and help us continue to stir the pot. We'll see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello, and thank you for sticking around for the Cheeky Check-In. I'm Monty Williams, licensed psychotherapist. Do you have a child or a loved one that you fear may be involved in a cult? If so, I recommend that you get some mental health therapy yourself and that you also follow the following steps. These were cultivated by Elizabeth Esther. And Elizabeth is a cult survivor and a novelist. The first step is understand that you are no longer family. I know how hard this can be, but if it is your child or sibling or parent, understand that their new family is the cult, and you can't take it too personally. It doesn't mean that you stop calling, that you stop inviting them to important functions and holidays. Please continue to do that. But you have to realize that their family is now the cult family. The second thing is kind of what I just spoke on. You want to stay involved in your loved one's life. Don't shame them. Don't continuously try to talk them out of it. Stay with them. Make the phone calls, send the text messages, send photos, so that when they do start to realize that they might want to leave, they know that they have a safe place to land. The third thing is to be a stronger force of love in your family member's life than the cult is. Continue to remind them of how much you love them. Never, ever waver. Number 4, understand that most cult members will not leave so long as the benefits they are receiving inside the cult are more immediate and profound than anything outside of the cult. So when you are giving these check-ins and thoughtful emails and text messages, you might also want to remind them of their own power, of how great life is, how the only answer isn't the cult answer without being that obvious about it. Number 5, be honest and self-aware. Be really, really careful not to try to sugarcoat anything or try to use coercive control yourself to get them out, because that's already what they're dealing with. What you want to do is just tell them you miss them when they don't show up at family functions. Tell them you love them and just be patient. And the final thing is to pray. Pray that they will eventually have enough messaging and have tapped into their neocortex, the higher functioning brain, enough to the point that they start to question the programming that they've been under. Thank you.
Yeah, baby, it's my time.